Right, how's it going, folks? I just wanted to record a little something to show off something that I actually wanted to take a deeper look at. So, with the launch of Shadowkeep, we got a whole bunch of weapons through the lectern. Some of y'all have probably already gotten like a bunch of the weapons from there, but I just wanted to more or less take a deeper look at these weapons and compare them to their analogs by means of like looking at other weapons that match up with them in slot as well as archetype wise. So looking at Loud Lullaby and Duke Mark 44, there are going to be some issues here in terms of like trying to compare range and stability and stuff like that. But the stat that I actually wanted to take a look at is the bounce intensity. So if we look here on the Loud Lullaby, we have a bounce intensity of 2, as well as a recoil, an almost perfect recoil direction. Whereas on the Duke, we have a recoil direction of 90, so it's going to kick a little bit harder to the left, and a bounce intensity of 10. So I don't know if we're looking for a higher number or a lower number here. But if we go ahead and go back to the tribute hall, we can see that the Loud Lullaby does seem to reset pretty quickly, but transitioning over to the Duke, it seems as though we're spending less time with our reticle at its arrested state. So if I spam, we've got more time with the reticle at its rested state on the Loud Lullaby than we do have on the Mark 44. And this is notable because we recently had this sort of retooled on 140s and 150 hand cannons. So if you have something like, say, a spare ration or an Austringer, I don't think I have one on me. Oh no, yeah I do. So compared to before, the reticle placement on these 140s and 150s definitely rests faster when trying to spam shots. So firing closer to the max rate of fire is a lot more forgiving, I would say, now than before. With that being said, I was actually talking with a couple of folks over on another YouTube comment section because, well, I don't have anything else to do. But no, we're moving right now, so I needed to take my mind off a couple things. So I chose to talk with some folks in a YouTube comment section on another Destiny video, and we were comparing the Arc Logic and the Gnawing Hunger. Now, my argument is that the Gnawing Hunger is definitely a superior auto rifle because of the better base stats. And I mean, we're looking at that in terms of range, stability. The Arc Logic has a higher handling speed, but that can be augmented by more than a couple things. So, take for example the Ophidian aspects, using Dragon Shadow, etc., etc. You know, these things serve to bolster handling as well as stability in some cases. But looking at just the base stats, we do have a better experience on the Gnawing Hunger. However, the one where I was sort of confused by would be the bounce intensity on the Gnawing Hunger versus the Arc Logic. Because on the Gnawing Hunger we have 46, and on the Arc Logic we have 53. So you have a notable difference in bounce intensity comparing the Arc Logic and the Gnawing Hunger. And I wanted to test that out because of the fact that if you were to, you know, take the recoil direction, let's say 47, which is, you know, markedly worse than the Gnawing Hunger, try to bump that up on the Arc Logic, keep the Gnawing Hunger more or less the same, and I think our test results are actually going to be a bit skewed here because we have tapped the trigger on here. But switching down, it does seem like we have a pretty stable frame here. We are skewing over to the right. That's just because of the natural recoil of the gun. But there is like a little bit of shimmy that we can see on the sides of the sight, whereas on the Gnawing Hunger, our reticle stays like more or less centered, whereas the sight picture kind of jumps around a bit, quite a bit actually. It's pretty noticeable. Just looking back at the Duke versus the Loud Lullaby, and seeing where the reticle rests there compared to Loud Lullaby. So Duke versus Loud Lullaby, Gnawing Hunger versus Arc Logic. These are the two weapons that I have right now that I can really sort of compare. But if we look here at the other weapons that are available, let me just go ahead and let's say the Tranquility. Alright, so now we're going to compare the Tranquility and the Long Shadow. Both are 90 RPM snipers that go in the kinetic slot. Both are legendaries, so we don't have to worry about any sort of like intrinsic bonuses that anything might get from being an exotic weapon. We have identical impact stats, higher base range on the Tranquility, higher base stability on the Long Shadow, higher handling stat on the Tranquility, as well as higher reload speed on the Long Shadow. And then we have a higher aim assist by a couple points on the Tranquility versus the Long Shadow. Everything else being more or less the same except for the zoom. We have a lower zoom factor here on the Long Shadow, base zoom factor that is, as well as higher recoil direction stat on the Tranquility. But the biggest difference maker here is the bounce intensity on the Long Shadow versus the Tranquility. Now here we're looking at a difference of over 10, looking at a difference of about 15 here. So 38 on the Tranquility and 53 if I'm doing my math. If I'm doing my math right on the Long Shadow. So looking at the two weapons right here, and we're trying to keep our stats as close as possible. Of course, we have less stat here on range and stability than here on the Tranquility. And see that may screw with our results a little bit. Actually, let me drop down a little bit here. Yeah, so trying to get them as close as possible. We'll see if the difference in bounce intensity really does make a difference versus the two. So we've got a zoom right there, and there's a little bit of a jerking motion where our reticle actually spikes up and settles kind of back down, whereas the Long Shadow, it's more of a bounce than it is on the Tranquility, but they both definitely spike outwards from radiating from where you first placed your shot. So we see that with the Tranquility, we have a sharper movement curve in terms of, you know, where the reticle goes after it is fired versus the Long Shadow taking a little bit more time to settle. And so we have a bounce intensity here of 38 versus bounce intensity here of 53. So what this tells me is that you want to have a bounce intensity higher on a weapon that, you know, you can really take your time with, because, you know, you want to maintain as much of your sight picture on the target as possible. But in general use, I would reckon to say that a lower bounce intensity is a better option. So comparing that with you know, our arc logic and our gnawing hunger. Gnawing hunger still definitely takes the cake there. So taking little tiny pot shots, it spikes and then it settles back down. Whereas, let's say with the gnawing hunger, it spikes and settles a little bit faster. But I think, you know, this is just like preliminary testing on my end. Hopefully there's some folks out there in the community that have more experience with this and probably have, you know, better hypotheses about this than I do. I just wanted to point this out just because, you know, we have the luxury of looking at, you know, more weapons that occupy the same sort of space that other weapons that we are already used to do. So now we're able to actually compare and contrast, you know, stats that factor into the personal preference perk that I would say. Because yeah, like looking at this, like it definitely contributes to the feel of the weapons, and I can see why folks would prefer one over the other depending on how you want your gun to behave. And see, another interesting thing here is that because of how the gun is built on the loud lullaby, we're only seeing the reticle for like the last couple of frames that it's coming back into view, whereas on the Duke, we're seeing it pretty much the whole time, jumping up and down. So, I don't know. I just wanted to put that information out there and see, you know, if it sprouts wings on its own. Let me know what you guys think. And if you want to discuss with me any further, you can find me on Twitter at Reginlad or on Instagram at ReginladTheKidYT, or you can just drop a comment down in the comment section below. I am definitely enjoying Shadowkeep by a vast amount. Unfortunately, I am in the middle of a move right now, and I am pretty sick, so probably going to table having like an extra stream. I was thinking of doing an extra stream this upcoming weekend, checking out like the new things that would be dropping soon, as well as revisiting the campaign, just because we tried to stream on Tuesday, and unfortunately because of the server side issues on Bungie, we did actually have a lot of corrupted video footage. So probably going to go back to that sometime at a later date. Definitely going to see you guys again on Tuesday for the next stream. But with all that being said, you know, that's all sort of in the periphery of things that don't matter. What matters is that you chose to spend your time here with me today, and I'm so thankful for it. So whether this is your 5th video or your first minute with me, I appreciate you and your time. This has been Reginald the Kid. May my Scarborough lead to your victory. Have a good one, guys.